The research vessel Horizon drifted silently through the darkness of uncharted space. Its white hull gleamed under the light of distant stars as it approached an unremarkable planet, orbiting a yellow sun in the Cygnus constellation. On the bridge, Captain Allison Wright stood with her hands clasped behind her back, watching the planet grow larger on the main screen. "Sensors show a thin atmosphere, some water bodies, and moderate temperatures," said Daniel Garcia, the chief science officer. He looked up from his station with a puzzled expression. "But there's something else. A signal. Very faint, but definitely artificial." Captain Wright raised an eyebrow. "Origin?" "The planet's surface. It's unlike anything in our database." Daniel adjusted his glasses as he studied the readings. "The pattern repeats every 12 seconds. "Distress signal?" Wright asked. Daniel shrugged. "Possibly." Wright touched the communication panel on her chair. "Bridge to Lieutenant Miller." "Miller here," came the swift reply from the ship's communications specialist. "We're picking up an unusual signal from HD 2209. See if you can decode it." A few minutes later, Kate Miller's voice returned, excitement evident in her tone. "Captain, you need to see this. The signal contains images and what appears to be a form of language." Wright looked at her first officer, Commander Ben Hayes. "Prepare a landing party, full environmental gear and defensive measures." Hayes frowned. "The Valaxian ambassador warned us not to deviate from our scheduled route through this sector." "The Valaxians warn us about everything," Wright replied with a small smile. "If they had their way, we'd never leave Earth orbit. Besides, we're explorers first." The shuttle descended through wispy clouds to the planet's surface. It landed on a flat plain surrounded by strange, twisted formations that resembled trees without leaves. The planet's twin moons hung low in the lavender sky. Daniel Garcia led the 6-person team out of the shuttle. Their boots crunched on the rocky ground as they activated their scanning equipment. The air was thin but breathable according to their instruments. "The signal is coming from that direction." Garcia pointed toward a cluster of rock formations about a mile away. "Stronger, now." The team walked carefully across the barren landscape. Science Officer Lisa Patel collected soil samples while Security Chief Paul Bennett kept his hand near his weapon, eyes scanning their surroundings. "I don't see any signs of civilization," Bennett muttered. "Not all civilizations build like we do," Garcia reminded him. They approached the rock formations, which now appeared to have small openings like cave entrances. Garcia's scanner beeped rapidly. "The signal is coming from inside," he said. Bennett stepped forward. "I'll go first." The team followed Bennett into the largest opening. Their helmet lights illuminated a smooth tunnel that sloped gently downward. The walls sparkled with tiny crystals embedded in the stone. After walking for several minutes, the tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber. The team stopped, staring in wonder. The cavern stretched farther than their lights could reach. Thin, wispy shapes floated in the air. They glowed with soft blue light that pulsed gently. "Are those alive?" Patel whispered. As if in response, several of the glowing shapes drifted toward the humans. They moved with purpose, stopping a few feet away. The closest one began to pulse more rapidly, changing colors from blue to green to purple. Garcia checked his scanner. "The signal is coming from them." Miller stepped forward, her eyes wide. "They're trying to communicate." The floating being continued to change colors in a distinct pattern. Miller recorded the sequence with her device, comparing it to the signal they had detected from orbit. "The same pattern," she confirmed. "I think they're sentient." Wright approached slowly, hands open to show she carried no weapons. "We come in peace," she said, knowing the beings probably couldn't understand her words but hoping her tone would convey her meaning. The floating entity pulsed brightly and moved closer. It extended a tendril of light that stopped just short of touching Wright's outstretched hand. The air around them seemed to vibrate with energy. Suddenly, Miller gasped. "Captain, I'm receiving images in my mind. I think they're telepathic." The other team members nodded, experiencing the same phenomenon. A series of images flashed through their minds. The planet teeming with thousands of the light beings, then ships of unknown design appearing, followed by destruction, and the light beings hiding underground. They're showing us their history, Garcia said quietly. I think they've been attacked. More images came, the light beings sending signals into space year after year, with no response. Ships from other alien races passing by their planet without stopping. The beings growing fewer in number over time. When the mental communication ended, the humans stood in silence, processing what they had learned. They've been sending distress signals for centuries, Miller said finally. No one ever came to help. Captain Wright looked at the beings with determination in her eyes. Until now, back on the horizon, the team gathered in the conference room to share their findings with the rest of the crew. Miller had worked tirelessly to establish a more effective communication system with the beings, who called themselves the Nalari. From what we understand, the Nalari once had a vast civilization spanning several star systems, Garcia explained. Then something they call the dimming happened. Many died, and the survivors retreated to this planet, Miller added. They've been sending distress signals for over 300 years. They say ships from other worlds have passed by, but none ever responded. It's like they're invisible to the other species. How is that possible? Commander Hayes asked. Their signals are unusual but certainly detectable. That's the strange part, Garcia said. The Nalari exist partially in a quantum state that most sensor systems aren't designed to detect. Our systems only picked them up by chance because of a recent upgrade. Something about human perception allows us to see them when other species can't. Wright leaned forward. Or won't. The Valaxians were very insistent that we avoid this sector. The Nalari say they're being hunted, Bennett cut in, by something they call the Void Eaters. They believe these creatures will return soon to finish what they started. Captain Wright stood up, her decision already made. Contact Earth Command. Tell them we've discovered a previously unknown sentient species under threat of extinction. Request reinforcements and diplomatic support. She looked around at her crew, seeing determination reflected in their faces. The Nalari have been forgotten by the galaxy for too long. We will not abandon them. As the horizon sent its message to Earth, no one on board noticed the faint distortion in space at the edge of the system. The first sign that the Void Eaters were already on their way. Admiral Frank Delaney frowned as he read the report from the horizon for the third time. He sat in his office at Earth Command, the walls lined with screens showing star charts and fleet positions. The early morning light streamed through the windows, illuminating the worry lines on his weathered face. A species no one can see except us? He muttered. Sounds far-fetched. His aide, Lieutenant Eric Collins, stood at attention nearby. Captain Wright has an exemplary record, sir. She's not known for exaggeration. Delaney nodded slowly. I know. That's what concerns me. If she's right, why would every alien race in the Concordat ignore a species in distress? He tapped his screen, bringing up a communication channel. Get me Susan Carter. If anyone can get straight answers from our alien friends, it's her. Susan Carter was Earth's most skilled diplomatic envoy. She had negotiated the initial treaties that brought humanity into the Galactic Concordat just 5 years earlier. Now, she found herself in the Grand Hall of the Concordat's headquarters, a massive space station that orbited a neutral star. She approached the Vexari delegate first. The tall insect-like alien towered over her, its compound eyes reflecting her image back at her. Ambassador, she began, I'm inquiring about a species called the Nalari. They inhabit planet HD 2209 in the Cygnus sector. The Vexari's antennae twitched slightly. We have no record of such a species. They've been sending distress signals for centuries, Susan pressed. The matter is irrelevant to strategic concerns, the Vexari replied, its voice clicking through the translator. There are many primitive species that claim distress when they simply lack advancement. Susan tried not to show her frustration as she moved on to the Tellurian ambassador, a gas-filled environment suit containing a being of pure energy. The Nalari? The Tellurian's voice hummed. Our sensors have never detected any such beings in that sector. Perhaps your human instruments are malfunctioning. The pattern continued with every representative she approached. The Morkai, a species of aquatic mammals known for their compassion, simply stated, "Some species are simply not worth saving." Susan left the hall troubled by the consistent dismissal. Something felt wrong. She contacted Admiral Delaney immediately. "They're hiding something," she reported. "Every single species gave me the diplomatic version of a brush-off. Even the Morkai, who pushed for the Concordate's protection treaties in the first place." Back on HD 2209, Chief Engineer Hector Ramirez wiped sweat from his brow as he worked alongside the Nalari to enhance their communication systems. The underground cavern had become a makeshift workshop, with equipment from the horizon spread across stone tables. The Nalari floated nearby, their tendrils of light occasionally reaching out to adjust a component or indicate a change. After 2 weeks of work, Ramirez was beginning to understand their unique technology. "It's amazing," he told Garcia, who had stopped by to check on his progress. "Their tech is based on quantum principles we've barely begun to understand. They exist partially in another dimensional state." Garcia looked intrigued. "That might explain why other species can't detect them." "It's more than that," Ramirez replied, lowering his voice. "I've been analyzing the data they've shared. The Nalari's brain structure resonates at a frequency that produces patterns similar to human neural pathways. Our frontal cortex development is unique among concordate species. I think we're the only ones who can fully perceive and interact with them." Garcia frowned. "Are you saying the other species physically can't see them? Or won't?" "Maybe both," Ramirez said grimly. "The Nalari showed me records of their earlier encounters. Some species definitely detected something but chose to ignore it. Others seemed completely unaware of their existence." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent call from the horizon. "Garcia, Ramirez, get back to the surface immediately," Commander Hayes ordered, his voice tense. "Our long-range sensors have detected something entering the system." The two men hurried to gather their equipment. As they prepared to leave, one of the Nalari approached them, pulsing rapidly in patterns they had learned meant urgency and fear. Miller, who had remained with the Nalari to study their language, translated. "They say it's the Void Eaters. They've returned." On the bridge of the horizon, Captain Wright watched the long-range scanner with a grim expression. A massive vessel had entered the system and was moving slowly toward HD 2209. It was unlike any ship design in the Concordate database. "Time to intercept?" she asked. 48 hours at current speed," replied the navigator. Wright opened a channel to Earth Command. Admiral Delaney's face appeared on screen. "We have a situation, Admiral. An unknown vessel has entered the system. Based on the Nalari's reaction, we believe it's the threat they warned us about." Delaney's expression was grave. "I've just received orders from the Concordate Council. We are to withdraw from the HD 2209 system immediately. They claim it's a restricted zone due to natural phenomena dangerous to navigation." Wright's jaw tightened. "With all due respect, sir, that's clearly not true. There's a sentient species here about to be wiped out." "I know," Delaney replied quietly. "And I've just spent 6 hours arguing with the Council about it. They're threatening diplomatic sanctions if we don't comply." He leaned closer to the screen. "What's your assessment of the threat?" "The vessel is at least 5 times our size. Design unknown. But the Nalari are terrified. They claim these Void Eaters consume their very essence." Delaney was silent for a moment. "The Concordate has explicitly ordered us to withdraw. Those are our official orders." He paused meaningfully. "However, your communication systems appear to be experiencing interference. It might take some time for you to receive official orders." Wright understood immediately. "Yes, sir. We are experiencing communication difficulties. It might take several days to restore full functionality. In the meantime, use your best judgment, Captain. I'll see what support I can send your way. Delaney out." As the screen went dark, Commander Hayes looked at Wright. "Orders, Captain?" Wright turned to face her crew. "Prepare the colony for defense. Contact Security Chief Bennett and have him organize our people on the surface. And send a message to the approaching vessel identifying ourselves and requesting their intentions." She stood straighter, determination in her stance. The Nalari have been abandoned by everyone else. We will not do the same. Below on the planet, the Nalari's lights dimmed in fear as they sensed the approaching danger. For the first time in centuries, however, they were not alone. The humans worked tirelessly, setting up defensive positions and preparing for whatever might come. In the main cavern, Dr. Nicole Summers, the ship's xenobiologist, made a breakthrough. After studying the Nalari physiology, she developed a method to temporarily shift human perception deeper into the quantum spectrum, where the Nalari partially existed. This might help us see what we're fighting, she told Lieutenant Joe Harrison, as she calibrated the device. If these Void Eaters feed on the Nalari's quantum resonance, we need to understand how they do it. As the device activated, the air around them seemed to shift and waver. The Nalari suddenly appeared more solid, their wispy forms revealing complex patterns that had been invisible before. And at the edge of their perception, they could now sense something else. A darkness approaching, hungry and ancient, reaching across space toward the last colony of a dying species. The Void Eater vessel hung in orbit around HD 2209, a massive black shape against the stars. It resembled no known design, its surface shifting and rippling like oil on water. The horizon seemed tiny in comparison, maintaining position between the alien ship and the planet below. On the bridge, Captain Wright studied the sensor readings with growing concern. Any response to our messages? Communications Officer Miller shook her head. Nothing, Captain. They're not even acknowledging our presence. They know we're here, Commander Hayes said quietly. They're just deciding whether we matter. The scanner beeped loudly. Captain, they're launching smaller craft, reported the tactical officer. Dozens of them heading for the surface. Wright tapped her communicator. Write to Security Chief Bennett. They're coming your way. On the planet's surface, Bennett and his team had established a defensive perimeter around the main entrance to the Nalari caverns. 20 crew members armed with pulse rifles stood ready, while Dr. Summers worked frantically to adjust her quantum perception devices. Everyone activate your devices now, Bennett ordered. The small units attached to their helmets hummed to life, and the world around them shifted slightly. Colors became more vivid, and the air seemed to ripple with previously invisible energy. They're coming in fast, called Lieutenant Harrison, monitoring the scanner. Impact in 30 seconds. The first of the small craft struck the ground about a mile from their position. It wasn't a crash, it was a deliberate landing. The craft melted into the surface, leaving behind dark, moving shapes that flowed across the ground like living shadows. What the hell are those things? One of the security team whispered. Through their enhanced perception, they could see the creatures clearly now. The Void Eaters had no solid form. They were swirling lattices of dark energy moving with purpose toward the caverns. Where they passed, the ground dimmed, as if they were absorbing the very light from their surroundings. Hold positions, Bennett commanded. Wait until they're in range. The security team watched as the shadows approached. When the first wave came within 50 yards, Bennett gave the order. Fire! Blue energy pulses from the rifles streaked toward the Void Eaters. The first volley passed straight through them with no effect. The creatures continued their advance unharmed and undeterred. Adjust frequencies, Dr. Summers called out, her fingers flying over her control pad. Try setting 739. The team quickly adjusted their weapons. The next volley hit, the approaching shadows with visible impact, causing them to recoil and distort, but it only slowed them down temporarily. We need more power, Harrison shouted. They're still coming. From the cavern entrance behind them, several Nalari emerged. Their light bodies pulsed with determination as they floated forward to join the humans. The brightest one, whom the crew had named Lumina, positioned itself next to Dr. Summers. Lumina began to pulse rapidly, projecting images into Summers' mind. The doctor gasped as understanding flooded through her. They're showing me how to modify our weapons, she said excitedly. The Void Eaters feed on their quantum resonance. We need to create a counter-frequency. As Summers worked to adjust their equipment, the first line of defense fell. 2 security officers screamed as the shadow creatures flowed over them. The humans didn't appear physically harmed, but they collapsed to the ground, their eyes vacant, as if something essential had been drained from them. "Fall back to the secondary position," Bennett ordered. The team retreated, dragging their unconscious comrades with them. Inside the main cavern, Dr. Summers worked with Lumina and the other Nalari to modify the remaining weapons. "The Void Eaters don't just feed on the Nalari," she explained to Harrison, as they worked. "They consume consciousness itself, the quantum patterns that make up awareness. The Nalari are more vulnerable because they exist partially in that state, but humans can be affected too." Harrison looked grim. "How many of these things are there?" "Hundreds, maybe thousands on that ship," Summers replied. "And each Nalari they consume makes them stronger." She handed him a modified rifle. "Try this. It should disrupt their energy matrix now." Outside, the battle continued. The defense line had been pushed back to the cavern entrance. The modified weapons were more effective, causing the shadow creatures to dissipate when hit directly, but there were too many of them. Bennett's voice crackled over the comm. "Captain, we can't hold them much longer. There are too many, and they keep coming." In orbit, the Horizon faced its own problems. The massive Void Eater vessel had launched an attack, firing beams of dark energy that drained the ship's power. "Systems on contact. Shields down to 30%, reported the tactical officer. "Main power fluctuating." Captain Wright gripped the arms of her chair. "Target their launch bays and fire everything we've got. We need to stop more of those things from reaching the surface." The Horizon's weapons flared, striking the alien vessel. The hits left temporary marks that quickly healed as the ship's strange surface rippled and reformed. "Minimal damage, Captain," Hayes reported grimly. "Their hull absorbs our energy weapons." Wright's communicator beeped. "Right here. Captain, it's Summers. I've made a discovery. The Void Eaters are energy beings that feed on consciousness, especially the quantum patterns unique to the Nalari. But they have a weakness. They can't absorb certain frequencies of energy. We've modified some weapons, but we need more power." Wright looked at her chief engineer. "Ramirez, can we reconfigure the main deflector to emit Dr. Summers' frequency?" Ramirez thought for a moment. "Yes, but we'd have to drop shields completely. We'd be defenseless." "It's a risk we'll have to take," Wright decided. "Dr. Summers, transmit your specifications to the Horizon immediately." As the engineering team worked to reconfigure the deflector, the situation on the ground grew desperate. Bennett's team had been forced all the way back into the main cavern. They formed a last line of defense around the remaining Nalari, who huddled in the center, their light dimming with fear. Harrison fired his modified rifle at the approaching shadows, watching with satisfaction as another Void Eater dissipated. But for every one they destroyed, 3 more flowed into the cavern. "We can't hold out much longer," he told Bennett. "We just need to buy a little more time," Bennett replied, reloading his weapon. "The captain has a plan." In orbit, the Horizon's shields dropped as Ramirez completed the modifications. "Deflector ready, Captain," he reported. "Target the largest concentration of those creatures on the surface," Wright ordered. "Fire!" A brilliant beam of energy shot from the Horizon toward the planet's surface. It struck the area around the cavern entrance, bathing the entire region in pulsing light. In the cavern, the effect was immediate. The Void Eaters writhed and contorted as the energy washed over them. Many dissipated entirely while others retreated, flowing back toward their landing craft like oil being pulled by an invisible tide. Harrison watched in amazement. "It's working!" But their victory was short-lived. The main Void Eater vessel shifted position, directing its dark energy beams at the Horizon. With its shields down, the ship took a direct hit. On the bridge, consoles exploded and the lights flickered. "Hull breach on decks 3 through 7, Hayes reported as alarms blared. "Main power failing." Captain Wright held onto her chair as the ship shuddered around her. "Keep that deflector online at all costs." As the Horizon fought to maintain its defensive position, a new alert sounded. The tactical officer looked up in surprise. "Captain, multiple ships entering the system. They're ours. Earth ships." On the main screen, a fleet of human, Vessels appeared, led by a massive battleship. Admiral Delaney's voice came through the communication system. "Horizon, this is Admiral Delaney on the Valiant. Sorry we're late. We brought some friends." Behind the human ships, vessels of unusual design appeared. Ships from species not part of the Concordat official fleet. The Concordat may have abandoned the Nalari, Delaney continued. But not everyone agrees with that decision. Now let's deal with these Void Eaters once and for all. Admiral Delaney stood on the bridge of the Valiant, watching as his fleet engaged the Void Eater vessel. The massive human battleship shuddered as it fired its main weapons, bright energy beams striking the dark surface of the alien craft. "Maintain fire on their propulsion systems," Delaney ordered. "Captain Wright, what's the status of the Horizon?" On the view screen, Wright looked exhausted, her uniform smudged with soot from damaged systems. "We're operational, Admiral, but barely. Life support is stable, but weapons are at minimal capacity." "Fall back and protect the planet," Delaney told her. "We'll handle this monster." As the Horizon moved to a safer position, Delaney turned to the figure standing beside him. The alien was tall and slender, with pale blue skin and 4 arms. It wore the insignia of the Phalanx civilization, a species known for their advanced scientific knowledge. "Ambassador Ziv, your ships are in position," Delaney said. The Phalanx nodded. "We follow your lead, Admiral." The Concordat's decision to abandon the Nalari was incorrect. Some of us remember our history better than others. On the other side of the bridge stood representatives from the Meridian and Solari species, both part of what they now called the Alliance of the Willing. These species had broken away from the Concordat's official stance and joined the human fleet. "All Allied vessels commence attack pattern Delta," Delaney commanded. The combined fleet moved with precision, surrounding the Void Eater vessel. Ships from each species fired weapons of different designs and energy types, probing for weaknesses in the strange, shifting hull. Meanwhile, on Earth, Professor Ryan Campbell worked frantically in his laboratory. The xenolinguist had been searching through ancient records since receiving a coded message from Admiral Delaney days earlier. Around him, holographic displays showed texts in dozens of alien languages. "I knew it," he exclaimed, jumping from his chair. "Computer, translate and compile references to the Nalari from all Concordat historical archives." As the computer worked, Campbell contacted Captain Alex Thompson on the diplomatic vessel Unity, which was en route to HD 2209 with the second wave of reinforcements. "Alex, I've found something incredible," Campbell said excitedly. "The Nalari weren't just another species, they were among the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy over 6,000 years ago. They pioneered quantum physics and dimensional engineering before most current Concordat species had achieved spaceflight." Thompson looked skeptical. "If they were so advanced, how did they end up nearly extinct on a single planet?" "That's the disturbing part," Campbell replied. "According to these records, the Nalari technology threatened the power structure of the early Concordat. When the Void Eaters first appeared, the Concordat leadership made a decision to let it happen." "You're saying they deliberately allowed the Nalari to be wiped out?" Thompson asked, shocked. "Worse. The Void Eaters weren't a natural phenomenon. They were a weapon system designed by a now extinct species called the Deverai. The system broke containment and became self-sustaining, but by then, the early Concordat had already decided to use the situation to their advantage. They erased the Nalari from official records and established the policy of ignoring their distress signals." Thompson's expression hardened. "I need to share this with the other dissident species immediately. This changes everything." Back at HD 2209, Dr. Summers and the Nalari worked in the underground cavern to develop more effective defenses. The battle above had bought them time, but the Void Eaters that had already landed continued to attack in waves. "If we could amplify the counter-frequency," Summers muttered as she adjusted equipment, "we might be able to push them back permanently." Lumina, the brightest of the Nalari, floated beside her, its light pulsing with increasing complexity. Over the weeks of working together, Summers had become more adept at understanding the Nalari's unique communication. "You're saying there's a power source?" Summers asked, interpreting the light patterns. Here in the caverns? Lumina led Summers and Harrison deeper into the cavern system, past chambers filled with frightened Nalari refugees. They descended, through narrow tunnels until they reached a sealed doorway covered in crystalline patterns. Lumina placed its tendrils of light against the door, which slowly dissolved, revealing a chamber beyond. Inside was a spherical device about 3 feet in diameter, glowing with soft blue energy. What is it? Harrison asked, approaching cautiously. It's their quantum core, Summers realized, scanning the device with her equipment. The last piece of their advanced technology. They've been keeping it hidden and powered down to avoid detection by the Void Eaters. Lumina projected a series of images into their minds, the device powering massive ships, creating sustainable habitats, and finally, being used as a weapon against shadowy figures that resembled the Void Eaters. This could power our counter-frequency device, Summers said excitedly, but activating it might attract more Void Eaters. Harrison contacted Captain Wright to explain their discovery. After consulting with Admiral Delaney and the alien allies, the decision was made. We need to end this now, Wright told them. Power up the core and prepare your device, Doctor. We'll coordinate our attack from orbit to coincide with your energy pulse. In space, the battle had reached a stalemate. The Void Eater vessel had sustained damage but continued to repair itself. Several human and allied ships had been severely damaged, their crews evacuated to other vessels. Admiral, Commander Hayes reported from the horizon, we're detecting energy readings from the planet. It's like nothing we've seen before. On the view screen, they watched as a blue glow emerged from the planet's surface, centered on the Nalari caverns. All ships pull back to minimum safe distance, Delaney ordered. Dr. Summers is activating the Nalari core. Below, in the central cavern, Summers connected her counter-frequency device to the quantum core. Lumina and the other Nalari surrounded the core, their light bodies pulsing in synchronization as they interfaced with their ancient technology. Power levels rising, Harrison reported, monitoring the readings. 90%, 95%, maximum capacity. Initiating pulse now, Summers called out, activating the final sequence. The quantum core flared brilliantly. Energy surged through Summers' device and exploded outward in an expanding wave of blue-white light. The wave passed through the cavern, walls through rock and soil, and spread across the planet's surface. Where it touched the Void Eaters, they writhed and dissolved. Those that had landed on the planet were instantly destroyed. The wave continued outward into space, washing over the ships in orbit. On the Valiant's bridge, the crew watched in awe as the energy wave struck the massive Void Eater vessel. Unlike the smaller creatures, the ship didn't immediately dissolve, but its surface began to crack, dark energy leaking out into space. All ships target those fractures, Delaney ordered. Fire everything you've got. The combined fleet launched a final massive assault. Their weapons struck the weakened hull of the Void Eater vessel, tearing it apart. The ship shuddered, its form collapsing in on itself, before exploding in a massive release of dark energy. As the shockwave dissipated, a cheer went up from the crews of the Allied ships. But their celebration was premature. Long-range sensors detected more Void Eater vessels approaching from deep space, a larger force than they had just defeated. Ambassador Ziv turned to Admiral Delaney, all 4 hands clasped in their species, gesture of determination. We have won the first battle, Admiral, but the war for the Nalari's survival has only just begun. The fleet gathered at the edge of the HD 2209 system. 27 human ships had now arrived, joined by 14 vessels from the Alliance of the Willing. They faced an approaching armada of Void Eater ships, at least 50 of the massive, dark vessels moving with single-minded purpose toward the planet of the Nalari. On the bridge of the Valiant, Admiral Delaney studied the tactical display with Rear Admiral Olivia Grant, who had arrived with the second wave of reinforcements. Even with our combined forces, we're outnumbered, Grant observed. Numbers aren't everything, Delaney replied. We know their weakness now. Ambassador Ziv approached, holding a datapad. We've analyzed the quantum frequency Dr. Summers used. If we modify our ship's deflector arrays, We can create a barrier that will disrupt the Void Eater's energy matrix. How long will it take? Delaney asked. 6 hours for the entire fleet, Ziv answered. Grant shook her head. The Void Eaters will be here in 4. Delaney straightened his uniform. Then we'll buy you the time you need. Prepare all ships for defensive formation. We'll hold them at the outer system boundary. On the planet's surface, Captain Wright coordinated with the ground teams. The Horizon, too damaged to join the space battle, had landed near the main Nalari settlement. Its crew worked to fortify the area, setting up energy barriers powered by the Nalari quantum core. The core is stable, but we can't risk another full-scale pulse, Dr. Summers reported. It would drain their remaining power completely. Wright nodded. We'll save it for a last resort. How are the Nalari holding up? Better than expected, Harrison answered. Now that they know they're not alone anymore, their spirits have lifted. Some of the younger ones have even started to glow brighter. In the main cavern, the Nalari elders had gathered around the quantum core. Lumina floated at the center of the group, its light pulsing in complex patterns as it communicated with the ancient device. Dr. Summers watched in fascination as the core responded, projecting holographic images of stars, planets, and ships. They're accessing their historical records, she told Wright. I think they're looking for something. The battle in space began with a flash of weapons fire. The human ships, faster and more maneuverable than the Void Eater vessels, darted between the enemy formation, firing precisely at weak points identified from their previous encounter. Target their propulsion systems, Grant ordered her squadron. Slow them down. The Alliance ships followed their own tactics. The Phalanx vessels created energy webs that temporarily entangled the Void Eaters, while the Meridian ships fired disruptive pulses that interfered with the dark energy patterns of the enemy. Despite their coordination, the Allied fleet took heavy damage. 3 human destroyers were crippled in the first exchange, their crews evacuating to escape pods. A Solari cruiser exploded in a flash of green light as it sacrificed itself to block a direct attack on the Valiant. We can't hold them much longer, Grant reported to Delaney as the Valiant shuddered under another hit. Shields down to 20%. We just need a little more time, Delaney replied. Ziv's team is almost finished with the modifications. On the planet below, Lumina suddenly detached from the Elder Council and floated rapidly to Dr. Summers. Its light pulsed with unprecedented urgency. It wants to show me something, Summers told Wright, as the Nalari projected images directly into her mind. Summers saw the quantum core not as a single device but as part of a larger system, a planetary defense network that had been dormant for millennia. The network had nodes buried deep beneath the surface at strategic points around the planet. Captain, there's a planetary defense system, Summers exclaimed. The Nalari had it all along, but it's been inactive for thousands of years. Lumina thinks we can reactivate it using the core and the ship's power systems. Wright immediately contacted Delaney to share the discovery. If we can get this working, it might turn the tide. Do it, Delaney ordered. We'll hold them off as long as we can. A team led by Harrison and Ramirez raced to connect the Horizon's remaining power systems to the quantum core. Guided by the Nalari elders, they extended power conduits to locations around the settlement where the network nodes were buried. In space, the battle grew desperate. Half the human fleet was damaged or destroyed, and the Alliance vessels were scattered. The Void Eater armada pushed steadily toward the planet, absorbing everything they threw at it. All ships, fall back to secondary defense line, Delaney ordered, as another cruiser exploded. Concentrate fire on the lead vessel. On the Valiant's bridge, warning alarms blared as systems failed. Hull breach on Deck 4, reported the tactical officer. Emergency force fields holding. Ziv approached Delaney. The modifications are complete on the remaining ships. We can deploy the disruption field on your command. Before Delaney could respond, a new alert sounded. Energy surge detected from the planet, called out the sensor officer. It's massive. On the surface, Wright, Summers, and the Nalari watched as the ancient defense system activated. The ground trembled as buried nodes rose from the soil, each pulsing with blue energy connected to the central core. Power at maximum, Ramirez reported, his hands flying over the controls. The Nalari are channeling it through the network. Now, Summers called out. Lumina and the Elders flared with brilliant light as they interfaced directly with the system. Energy surged through the network, creating a sphere of blue-white power that enveloped the entire planet. The sphere expanded rapidly outward, growing to encompass the space around HD 2209. When it reached the battling fleets, the effect was immediate. The Void Eater vessels froze in place, their surfaces crystallizing as the quantum disruption field took hold. Unlike the previous pulse, this sustained field didn't destroy them. It rendered them vulnerable. "All ships target the immobilized vessels," Delaney ordered. "Fire at will." The remaining Allied ships launched a coordinated attack. Their weapons, previously unable to cause lasting damage, now tore through the crystallized hulls of the Void Eater vessels. One by one, the dark ships shattered and exploded. The battle ended as suddenly as it had begun. The space around HD 2209 was filled with drifting debris from both sides, but the planet was safe. The few remaining Void Eater vessels fled into deep space, pursued by fast Alliance ships to ensure they didn't return. In the aftermath, the surviving fleet gathered above the planet. Delaney, Wright, and representatives from the Alliance species met in the Nalari Central Cavern, where the Elders waited to speak with them. Lumina floated forward, its light steady and bright. It projected images that Summers translated for everyone. "They're thanking us," she said. "For centuries they believed they were forgotten by the galaxy. Now they know they have allies willing to fight for them." Ambassador Ziv stepped forward. "What the Concordat did was unforgivable. Many of our species have already broken ties with them over this betrayal. We will form a new alliance, one that protects all sentient beings, regardless of form or origin." Delaney nodded in agreement. "Earth stands with you in this new beginning." As the diplomats discussed the future, Harrison found Summers watching the Nalari children playing near the quantum core, their wispy forms darting through the air with renewed energy. "They were nearly extinct," Summers said quietly. "Another few decades and they might have been gone forever. Instead, they have a future," Harrison replied, "because humans refused to look away when everyone else did." In the weeks that followed, the Nalari shared their quantum technology with humanity and their allies. Earth scientists marveled at principles that would advance their understanding by centuries. The Nalari, in turn, began to flourish again under the protection of their new allies. On the day the last human ship prepared to leave HD 2209, now designated as New Nalari in official records, Captain Wright stood with Lumina on a hilltop overlooking the settlement. New structures rose from the ground, combining human, Alliance, and Nalari architecture in a symbol of their cooperation. "We'll return often," Wright promised. "This is just the beginning." Lumina pulsed in response, projecting a final image into Wright's mind, a galaxy filled with light, where no species would ever again be forgotten or abandoned. As the horizon, now repaired, lifted off from the surface, Wright looked back at the glowing settlement below. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy, not through conquest or power, but by rising to defend those everyone else had forgotten.